Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel or welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a pretty big book unhaul. So a couple of weeks ago, I went through all of my shelves and I really did a deep dive into books that I for a fact knew that I was either never going to read or I read and I know I'm never going to read them again. And I just decided to go ahead and get rid of them because I was running out of room or had completely run out of room on my shelves for new books. So it is hard for me to get rid of books, but I have a pretty big box of ones that I feel good about getting rid of. So I'm going to try and go through this quickly. These books are in no particular order, so let's go ahead and just get started. The first one is The Girl in Red by Christina Henry. I have not read this book. However, I tried reading The Horseman by her, which is a Sleepy Hollow retelling. She is known for writing more adult, creepy fairy tale retellings, and it was horrible. I DNF'd it. The writing was horrible. The characterization was horrible. It was so bad, and it put just a negative taste on my mouth for any more of her books. I ended up getting this from Thrift Books. It has a library stamp on the top, which means I won't be able to sell it to my used bookstore. There is a little free library in my neighborhood, so I'm just going to go ahead and donate it to that. But Girl in Red is a Red Riding Hood retelling. I don't think I said that, but I'm just not going to read it after having read The Horseman and how bad it was. Then we have The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. Yes, I know that this is a classic. No, I do not like this author. I remember when I was a kid in the 5th grade reading her short story 11 and thinking, when I was 11 years old, how horrible that story was. And it's funny because when I became a teacher, the first textbooks that we had at the school I worked in, my first year as a teacher, that story was in there. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll reread it. And, as an adult, have a different perception of it. And I absolutely did not. I still thought it was horrible. I read The House on Mango Street and I'm like, okay, she's just not an author for me. I just don't connect with her. Life experiences, her stories, her writing. And yeah, I really don't need this book in my collection. Next we have From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is a romantic fantasy that was all hyped a couple of years ago. I read it, I thought it was okay, wasn't sure if I was going to continue with the series and just didn't enjoy it enough to want to continue, so there's no point in holding on to this book. Next we have the first 2 books in the Poppy War series by R.F. Kuang. These were hyped up a while ago and I thought I might be interested in reading them, and I've just lost complete and utter interest in reading them, so I'm just going to get rid of them. Next we have The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, and this is an academia type fantasy, and here's the thing why I'm getting rid of this book is that I use Goodreads. I like Goodreads. I know a lot of people have problems with it. And what I've learned about ratings on Goodreads, if you have an overly high rating, a lot of those are inaccurate, meaning that some people inflate good ratings. But when it comes to bad ratings of books, they're genuinely pretty accurate. This book has a 3.6 rating, the sequel has a 3.57 rating, and the third book in the series has a 2.93 star rating, which means that these books are not good, especially the sequels. I've read some of the reviews of people who read the sequels that just said they were horrible. So there's really no point in me starting a series that's only going to go downhill and that has really bad ratings on Goodreads. Next, we have The Stars Are Legion by Cameron Hurley. I picked this up at a used bookstore for a couple dollars one time. I've never read anything by this author, but I don't know. I'm just not interested in reading it anymore. I've had it for years. It's taking up space on my shelves, and if I was really interested in reading anything by this author, I would have read it already. Next, we have The Ember and the Ashes Quartet by Saba Tahir. I read the first 3 books in this series, and at one time, this series was very hyped as like this awesome YA series, and I just thought that all of the books were okay. I didn't love the characters, I didn't love the story, I didn't love the fantasy, I didn't love the magic. It was good, but I have lost 100% complete interest in finishing the series. I have the final book and I don't care anymore. I really just don't want to finish it, and it's taking up a lot of room on my shelves, so time to unhaul. Next we have The Book of M by Pung Shepherd. I read this earlier this year. have a whole review for it. I was hoping to love this book. It is a post-apocalyptic. It was pitched as a sci-fi, which is definitely more fantasy than sci-fi, and this book just let me down on so many levels, and I know for a fact I'm never going to read anything by this author again, and I sure am heck am not going to reread this book, so I'm going to go ahead and unhaul it to my bookstore. Next, we have The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I just read this book a couple of months ago and was highly disappointed in it. I have a full review for it, so if you want to hear the specifics about why I didn't enjoy this book, I'll link it up in the cards. But this is the same author as The Silent Patient, which, got a lot of hype. It was a very good thriller in my personal opinion, and I was expecting to see the same exact type story in The Maidens, and this book was just a huge letdown for me. So definitely not going to read it again or even keep it. Then we have the Dustlands trilogy by, I think, Moira Young. Yeah, this is a YA dystopian, and it's kind of an older series. And the reason that I'm getting rid of this series is because the author writes in this type of made-up vernacular, and it's very hard to read. I can appreciate when an author is trying to world build and include local dialect in this new dystopian world, but it's hard to read when you're not familiar with that type of language. And not only do the characters speak like that, but their internal monologue includes that type of language too, and it just is not enjoyable to read, so gonna unhaul. Then we have The Girl with the Pearl Earring by Chevalier, I think is who it's by. And yeah, I'm just not a historical reader, historical fiction reader. It's very rare for me to pick up historical fiction. I'm never going to read this. Next, we have the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden. I just lost interest in reading this entire trilogy. That's all I can say about it. There's specific reasons that I decided not to read it after learning more about the series and kind of delving into the plot. There were some things that I knew I would find problematic with it. So even though I haven't read it, I feel comfortable unhauling it. Next, we have Go Set a Watchman by Harper Lee. And obviously this is the same author as To Kill a Mockingbird. So I can appreciate To Kill a Mockingbird, don't get me wrong. I do think it has its merits, but I am not one of those people that is my favorite classic of all time. Harper Lee is my favorite author of all time. And I just don't enjoy the story enough to want to have a more deeper, richer understanding of it. So I know I'm never going to read this. I'm probably never going to read To Kill a Mockingbird again. So I feel good about getting rid of Go Set a Watchman. Then we have Hood by Stephen Lawhead. This is the first book in a Robin Hood retelling by this author. And I don't know if you guys can see it, the Pendragon Cycle by him, which is an Arthurian retelling. And I've only read the first book in that series. And I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't nearly as good as I thought it was going to be. And he is a very slow writer. And, with my experience with that book, I'm like, am I really ever gonna read a whole Robin Hood retelling? I think the series is like 4 or 5 books. Just based on how thick this is, based on my experience with his other works, I'm not really excited about this book or the series, so I'm just gonna let it go. Next, we have The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. This is a book that I picked up for a couple dollars at a used bookstore. I read it last year, and it was one of my most disappointing books of the year. I did not like it at all. I didn't like the story. I didn't find it creepy or atmospheric. There just wasn't enough information for me to believe the motivations of the antagonist in this book. And I didn't like the story at all. I'm never going to read another book by this author, and definitely will sell it to my used bookstore. Maybe someone else will like it more than I did. And then we have The Queens of Innis Lear by Tessa Cratton. You guys, I tried to sell this book to my used bookstore like more than once, and they won't take it. However, they took the sequel, Lady Hotspur. So I don't understand how their inventory works, because I'm like, how can you take the sequel but not have the first book? And I've never in my life seen this book at their bookstore. But I DNF'd this book about halfway through. This is a fantastical King Lear retelling, and it was absolutely horrible. I read half of the book, and the author kept repeating the same things over and over, and the plot wasn't progressing, and the characters weren't progressing, and nothing was happening. It was not good. So I'm gonna try and sell it again. Maybe they'll take it this time. If not, I will probably just go put it in the little free library in my neighborhood or something, because I really don't want this book. And next I have just 2 nonfiction books. So the first one is The Engine 2 Diet by Rip Esselstyn, and he is the son of a scientist that advocates for vegan eating. He was a prominent figure in the documentary Forks Over Knives. and his son is a fireman, and he ended up creating this diet for all of the men at his fire station, and it kind of documents like how their health improved having gone on this new diet. So these are all the recipes in here. And I'm not a vegan, you guys. I do believe in healthy eating and balanced diet and a diet high in fruits and vegetables, but I'm not a vegan. And the problem that I have with this is that a lot of the ingredients that are included in these recipes I don't have on hand, are not readily available. I would really have to gut my pantry and restock my pantry to include a lot of the ingredients that he includes in these recipes, and it's just not feasible at this moment in my life to do that. So maybe someone else will find these recipes more useful than I did, so I'm gonna unhaul it. Lastly is a book called Lessons Learned and Cherished. So this is a compilation from some famous people who talk about how teachers impacted their lives, and they provide little stories. So it has some celebrities in here like Oprah, Rachel Ray, and it's just stories about teachers that impacted their lives. I mean, it's a good concept. It's cute. It's short. I'm never going to read it. Okay, you guys, so that is it for the books that I plan on unhauling. So at some point this week, I'll go ahead and give these to my used bookstore to see if they take all of them or most of them, and I will just get a store credit to use to purchase some more books at some point in the future. So let me know in the comments if you read any of these books and what you thought of them. At this point, I'm not going to be keeping any of them. I thought long and hard about the books that I wanted to unhaul and the reasons why, so I feel good about letting these guys go. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in another video soon. Goodbye!